So does that bring back memories?
That's perfect, Hunley. Wow, I'm having flashbacks to Hunter Mountain. Oh my Lord. I haven't thought about this in a long time. So it really hit me last night. I was like getting spaced out over this thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now that's near the Catskills Mountain? Or...
It's the Eastern Catskills, what's known as the Italian Alps. The Italian Alps is the other side of the Borscht Belt, if that makes any sense. The Catskills covers a pretty vast terrain of, which is known as the Shokan Reservoir and some of the other areas, Ulster, Greene County into Ulster, Greene. It's pretty big. It's pretty big. So that's the Eastern Catskills, to be precise. Okay, so for the Grand Mark Groubert timeline, this is after the custom shop? No, this is after Sonora House, before the custom shop.
Oh,
right, because the custom shop comes when I moved back to New York in the 80s. So this is like 77 till I want to say like 81 or something, or 80, somewhere 77 to like 81 in there. Yeah, 3 or 4 year period in there.
Okay, I'm gonna have to put a playlist together and then order them so people can.
I'm a little confused too. But when we were at Sonora House, we couldn't have a job because of the grant. Then we got the grant, so that took care of us. But then when the grant was over, or before the grant, I worked at Hunter Mountain and Windham Mountain, 2 mountains, as a matter of fact, and we're going to get into that in a little bit because it's got a long history, these mountains. Besides just me working there, I wanted to explain what they were.
Oh, good. Yeah, that'll definitely help.
Just time for a drink right here from Vegas, since we just got back, and Eric and I took a gamble on going there to meet the boys.
Yep, and there were some awesome people there, and that's one of the gifts that was given. I forgot her name, but I think she's Bulgarian.
I think she's Mrs. Fix-It is her logo.
Mrs. Fix-It.
Mrs. Fix-It is her screen name, and she's Bulgarian, Americanized Bulgarian, been here about 29 years, 27 years or something, and came through Miami and is running for office on the red side, whether it's school board or city council, I'm not really sure. She wasn't sure herself. She had run unsuccessfully and is going to run again. So she was trying to rally the troops a little bit of people who would support her. This would be in, obviously, Nevada.
Okay, awesome. And right now, by the way, everybody, we are streaming live on Locals, and you can always check this out for this content and even more. I might have more that Mark will provide to upload, like an entire radio commercial that he's done.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, cool.
We'll only be able to play snippets of it. And by the way, the intro, I need to put a link in the description to the full video.
Yeah.
I only wanted to pull a little bit of it because they did great work on it, and everybody should definitely check it out.
Yeah, that's a nice video, because what they're showing is the snowmaking capital of the world, which is a trademarked name for Hunter Mountain.
Is that where it was invented? Or?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. These 2 engineers, or we'll get into it in a second. I don't know if you have that picture of Orville Slutsky that I found. He looked the same at 96 as he looked at 66. So he always looked 96. There's Orville. I mean, he looked that way when I was there.
Well, that's a blessing. That's like the Wilford Brimley.
Yeah. He always looked like that. And I think this is like the last couple of years of his life. He died fairly recently. But at 9, he was born in like 1917. So I don't know. The Slutsky. Wow. Yeah. His brother was Izzy Slutsky and Orville Slutsky. And after World War II, they came up with the idea or they had done it actually. Hunter Mountain had been like a private ski mountain for celebrities. And these guys were the maintenance crew or the engineers, him and his brother and his company. And some of the people who were going there were like the Kennedy clan, Robert Redford, Paul Newman, Joanne Woodward. Even later, Schwarzenegger was going there, and Kim Novak earlier on. So that group that was skiing there when it was a private mountain could not sustain it economically. So the brothers, I believe, purchased it in the late 50s. And by 1960, had come up with the complete snowmaking operation of combining cold air with cold water into a sub 32 degree weather. They would come out of these machines, like these turbine engines, Eric. It's very impressive because when we were living up there, when they would make snow at night, they would blanket the entire town. This is them putting together I think one of the snowmaking machines. I'm not sure. Maybe.
Yeah, it looks like a turbine, or,
yeah,
part of that.
These things were huge. They look like DC-9 engines, and they're all different sizes. Some of them they put up in towers. But the point of the matter is they trademarked and were the first ski mountain to have 100% man-made snow cover a mountain for skiing. 100% coverage. Think about that. Without snow. I mean, the gamble, even when you hear about it in California or whatever mountain is in the area where you live, it's about natural snow. Now they do make ancillary man-made snow, but for decades, it was about whether it snows or not, to go skiing. You can't base a business on that, Eric.
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah, you're heavily reliant on weather then.
Yeah, you're like a farmer in a sense, because you're completely dependent. It's like, oh, did it snow? Or did it rain? Did it whatever? So
yeah, not only that, I mean, it was about 130 miles from New York City, so that was the base of operations. So if it didn't snow in New York, it didn't snow anywhere. In terms of the people, the 6 million people who are living there. If it snowed in New York, everybody would come racing up there, because it was apparent it was snowing. But they had to market a company that guaranteed you coming up there that there would be skiing. And that's the genius of these two brothers. They never, ever, they were like the Beverly Hillbillies. They dressed in jeans. They were always picking up papers. You would go into the men's room in the lodge, in the ski lodge, and there'd be Orville Slutsky with a plunger. I swear to God, I mean, they never deviated from their working class roots, these guys.
Yeah, but that's kind of awesome. And maybe, I mean, it reminds me of Sam Walton.
Yeah.
Because apparently he would drive around his ragged ass pickup from Walmart to Walmart, just showing up randomly at stores, just touring the country, and very old school. We don't have that.
They did have kids who did not abide by that.
Of course.
Yeah.
The new tradition.
The kids were dicks who drank and got drunk and crashed cars and had Maseratis and drove around the town and everything else. So that was a different generation. But just from the snowmaking facilities that they created, other people came from all over the world to see how they did it. And they patented certain amounts of machinery involved in that. And right down the road was a New York State-owned mini ski mountain called Bel Air. So it was almost like capitalism versus socialism, because the socialist one was the New York State one. And they didn't care if they closed. They had employees. But when you work for Orville and Izzy Slutsky, when it was a company town is what I'm getting at. It was a company town in Hunter Mountain, which was Greene County, one of the most impoverished counties in the state of New York. In a previous episode, I was asked to run for county coroner. I was also asked to be on the county council on the arts, both of which I declined.
How old were you?
23. I mean, it was just
obviously qualified.
Yeah, obviously qualified to be county coroner. They had a just to fill in that story. They had a Republican county coroner who had been county coroner for 51 years, and he passed away. So I went to a Democratic club meeting of the Hunter Mountain Democratic Club, where a guy named Rafi Klein, who also owned a ski shop in town, he was the state Democratic chairman. I don't know what that was about, but there was a meeting, and I'm just sitting there reading the paper. I don't know what was going on. And all of a sudden he says, we need a young guy. We need young blood. We need a guy who could put in time and maybe be the county coroner for the next 51 years. And that's why I've asked Mark to run for county coroner. And I went, what? He goes, that's right. Everybody starts applauding. Yeah, Mark, way to go, way to go. And I've got long hair and a beard. You know, I'm looking like, you know, Mr. Woodchuck over there. And I said to myself, am I going to be the guy examining dead bodies? Before I can get the thought out of my mind, Rafi Klein goes, don't worry, you won't be examining dead bodies. All you have to do is sign the death certificate. You're not the medical coroner. You know what I mean? It was like,
you're not medical examiner, you're coroner.
You're not medical examiner. You're
an official position, like
right.
It's a stamp.
And it was a Republican county. So they didn't care what job they got, you know, from the Democratic side. They would take anything. And I said, well, what does it pay? He said, I think, roughly remembered, I think he said like 17,000 a year or something, or 16, or some ridiculously low number. And I said, how much money is there for campaign? And he says, you're going to have to go out of pocket. So I said, well, what's the campaign? He goes, you got to knock on every single door in the county. I said, bro, I don't think I'm up for this. So I got out of it. And I also got out of the council on the arts job, which I kind of wanted, but it was across the river in Hudson. But I just wanted to show you Hudson, New York, which was across the river. The reason I came over was because I was on the other side of the river in Annandale. And in Annandale, they had created a little bit north of Annandale was a town called Tivoli, which rumor has it was completely inbred and spelled I love it backwards. And Tivoli was next to a town called Hudson. And this was Dutchess County, but it was across the river. And they had what was known as, in the 1800s, the Hudson River Valley School of Painting. And I sent you one example of it. This is, yeah. And these that's Hunter Mountain all the way in the background. And in the foreground, what you're seeing is a lot of trees that have been stripped of their barks by the tanners that had raped and pillaged a lot of the trees in the area. And that's, you know, right down by the Hudson River. So Thomas Church was part of that school. Many famous painters came out of the Hudson River Valley School of Painting. And that one, I think, is Hunter Mountain from 1866. So this is how far back it goes. And, you know, when I was at Bard, the view out the window was of that mountain. So when I got out of college, I said, let me see what's going on over there. So I got one of these jobs in the ski business because they were easy to do and whatever, you know, you could manage it. But getting back to the company town part of it, the Slutskys, this is kind of funny, when the minimum wage went up in the country, they didn't know it was the minimum wage going up. They thought the Slutskys had given them a raise. So they went over and they would personally thank Orville Slutsky, I swear to God, for the raise that they got of 25 cents whenever the minimum wage went up under Jimmy Carter or whoever was president at the time. When I was there, it was the late 70s. So I knew that he wasn't giving me a raise. But I got a job working in Emilio's ski shop. And Emilio was an Italian who had an Austrian wife. And they had met in Argentina, had a ski shop in Forest Hills, Queens, and somehow got the contract to run the ski shop in the base lodge at Hunter Mountain, which was a gold mine. If you could show that picture I sent you, that's a picture of me. That's it. I wasn't going to put that up yet, but as long as you got it up now, that's fine. This is me. This is like my work area over here with the ski boots and the skis and everything else. And I had to go to school to learn how to be a Nordica boot technician and how to be a Solomon binding expert. You had to get certified. You had to get these certifications. As all the jobs I've ever had involved insane certifications, from being a drug counselor on down. I know Barnes is against certifications, and I understand why. But at that point, I had to learn how to be a custom boot fitter, which I developed a niche. I was making a custom boot orthotics, ski boot orthotics, right over there, and that was my operation, was running that ski shop there. So at the mountain, it was the craziest, I don't know, ethno-demographics you could imagine, because you had professional skiers who would come there because it was literally a professional ski mountain. It was icy as all fuck, but the best skiers were able to carve their skis through that man-made ice, which is as most skiers who are watching this episode right now know, is radically different from, skiing powder in Park Slope, out west.
Mhm.
That's a whole different thing. So we would get these guys coming over from the west saying, oh, this is a chip shot, this mountain. And we're going, good luck. And they'd be sliding all the way down the mountain face first because they weren't able to ski. Here's the 100 Mountain Ski Bowl. Yeah, that's a very nice picture of it. I don't know what year that is, but they continued to expand the mountain. The mountain was about 4,300 feet high, so it wasn't crazy. But they had used dynamite to blow up like sections of the mountain to make it like, at one point there's a trail. It's hard for me to remember all this, but there was a trail called K27, which I think was like a 44-degree angle, a drop, which was going on a ski jump, like straight down, and double black and everything else. I was just an average skier, but there were guys there who were coming there who were real pros, especially because New York was close by and tri-state region and everything else. But we also had an incredibly insane types of skiers. We had, keep in mind, this is the 70s. We had people in disco outfits who would rent skis, go out on Quaaludes, and just roll around in the snow laughing. Couldn't get off of from the ski lift where you got on. They couldn't even get on. So they had these rental skis. They were on Quaaludes in disco outfits, just rolling around in the snow. That was one group of people. We had another group of people, and I'm talking about if there's a shot, you show that shot of the crowd in the base lodge, right? How many people were there? That's from the 90s. There was a shot. I don't know if you got it.
Let me look for it.
Anyway, it was a madhouse. It was a madhouse on Saturdays and Sundays. There was a lot of drugs. There was a lot of drinking. There was fornicating. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And the type of people that came up from the city was the reflection of the city. So we'd have these little Guidos in leather jackets and blue jeans from Bay Ridge, Italian kids who were 15 to 19 years of age, who were skiing in leather jackets, like right out of Goodfellas, Eric. You know what I mean? It was like, what was the kid's name who got shot in the foot by Joe Pesci in Goodfellas?
I don't remember the
right,
name.
But they kind of look. He later ended
Spider or something.
Spider, yeah. It looked like Spider. Like, look at this is kind of at the original lodge that they built indoors had a steam room and swimming pool inside the lodge, and these bars everywhere, and people just getting completely wasted and going out and skiing and crashing into trees and dying like Sonny Bono did, but Sonny did it out west, on some sort of pills. But here in Hunter Mountain, these people would be fighting on the slopes. They'd have, beefs with each other. They'd end up in the Red Cross room, the emergency room that we had down below. And one time I had to go out. I used to have to do the accident reports as part of the job. So I would take a clipboard and I'd go. It was just, it was so busy. Then I had to stop what I was doing, go into the hospital room or whatever they had there. And they had these two kids on gurneys and they crashed into each other, Eric. And I was supposed to take an accident report from both of them to make sure that their injuries were not related to the skis and the bindings and whatever, right? So these two guys are still arguing on the gurneys with each other, and I get their names on the clipboard, and both their legs are broken, by the way. One has a left leg broken, the other one has a right leg broken, and they're on the gurney still arguing with each other that they cut each other off, and they're both from Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, looking like John Travolta from Staying Alive. So Saturday Night Fever. So these two guys start punching each other in the face from the gurneys while I'm in between the two gurneys. They're punching each other in the face. Keep that in mind. They also had Special Olympics every year before they were known as Special Olympics. I had a guy come in. He had no legs from the waist down. I had to custom fit his hands to the ski boots so he could put his body on the back of the skis while he skied. I mean, and it was one after another, one type of special needs person.
Kind of cool, though.
Another. What's that?
Kind of cool, though.
Yeah, no, I found it to be a challenge. Yeah, I found it. And I just treated them like anybody else. Like I did. I just said, all right, what's the deal? And they come in with the boots, or I'd have, a person with one leg, and had a prosthetic. You had all the different combinations. And every year they had like a special, not Special Olympics, but special needs weekend, let's say, where all these people showed up. It was a little challenging, when you're super hungover and you're trying to remember what day it is, and you got a guy with no legs who's asking you to custom fit his hands to his ski boots. It's a little much.
But you're there to serve.
Dude, look how skinny I was. I'm trying to get back to my original weight.
So am I, brother.
11 pounds, 6 ounces. This was some other weight, but oh man, that's amazing. Yeah, that's must be Christmas because the Christmas decorations are up,
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so they also had a weekend.
Looks like the ceiling's about to fall.
No, it was just the way it was designed. It was it wasn't going to come down, but I mean, it was a super modern looking building. Yeah, because these guys were engineers and they had a construction company, so they would build anything, and they built a lot of the town too. Although the town goes all the way back to the 1600s, I think.
Wow.
Long history, and there's a lot of, which I'm going to get into a little bit later. There's a lot of Dutch people up there, going back to Henry Hudson. There's a lot of Van Ettens, Van Arsdales, Van Charles. I mean, there's a lot of Vans. And these are not regular, right? But that's not what it was called back then. And John, I was not looking for that word, but thanks. Okay. They were just, they didn't even say special needs. It was just 76, so it wasn't Paralympics. But anyway, so they had another event every year where the New York City policemen would come up to race against the New York City firemen, and they would ski down with a fire hose that was like 70 feet long in a slalom race going through gates. If you know what a slalom race is, it's gated and you ski within the gates. There's giant slalom, there's grand, there's slalom, which is a tighter gate distance than a regular slalom. So anyway, the police would show up and ski in uniform or some derivation of their uniform, gussied up for warmth. And then the firemen would ski with their helmets on and all their gear, and they would race down the mountain with these fire hoses. And it was spectacular to see the chaos that ensued. But invariably, both groups, somehow numbering about 150 each, would end up at a place called the Klondike Bar outside of town and get into massive fistfights the entire night until all the state police had to show up. Every year, they had these massive fistfights and this ski race and there were people who are going to watch this, who are going to know what I'm talking about, who may be ex-cops or ex-firemen out of New York. It was chaotic. It was pretty chaotic.
Wow. I can imagine. But then they all, like the cops all knew the state cops probably, or there was
no, they didn't. It was a separate world. Really? It was a completely separate world up there. Once you left New York, it was like you might as well have been in Vermont. It's a misnomer about New York because New York is so large.
True.
And has nothing to do with New York City. Because I mean, this is 130 miles out. I mean, it's mostly farmland and Jewett and all these other places going all the way out to Cooperstown and all the way up. But there were all these discos. Keep in mind, this is the 70s. So there was dozens and dozens of discos up there that were gigantic. One of them was called Eliphas. And I remember one night coming out of Eliphas, this giant disco, and these Italian kids from Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, were hitting a girl in the head with snowballs. You know what I mean? And just pelting her. And I said something, and of course they then turned on me, which led to me getting my nose broken and my head beaten in and taken in a car to Albany Medical Center with a broken nose from these kids beating the living crap out of me. So because I was established as a local, if you stayed for a number of years in the off season and on season, which is what I was doing, you were perceived as a local by that time. And I had been up there, often, because most people just had a winter house or whatever. But, I was living there year round. So I worked in this nerve center and I knew a lot of people. I knew the mayor and blah, blah, blah. So they took me in this ambulance to Albany Medical Center. I had a broken nose. My face was all fucked up from these kids. And I said kids, they must have been like 16 or 19, somewhere in that age range. So it took about, I want to say 6 months to a year, but they got the kids to come up back to the hotel that they had rented. Because keep in mind, they had no jurisdiction, the police and the DA. The DA tricked these kids into coming back up because they had destroyed the hotel room they were in. And they came back up and they put them in a lineup in front of me, and I picked them out, and they were arrested and indicted right there in the state police barracks, if I recall. Yeah, the state, and they threatened me with all kinds of stuff, but they were indicted and convicted of assault. And I just remember this last night, so it was kind of interesting. I was trying to remember some of these stories, but the Hunter Mountain Ski Shop was a non-union operation, and somebody, this is a separate issue on the storyline. Somebody came up from New York City and tried to convince us to have a vote as to whether to have a union. You know what I mean, Eric? When you have that pre-vote, like in Silkwood or any of these movies, or you know, where you show union organizing, there's always
it happens now. They just did it on Amazon in Staten Island.
Yes,
recently.
Yes. So this guy came up and he gave us a whole history of the unions. We were sitting in my kitchen in Sonora House. A bunch of the workers were there, and we weren't clamoring for a union. It wasn't like we weren't doing anything. This guy came up and he tried to organize us and said, we got to have this vote. So we're just listening, going, okay, that's interesting. And he says, look, it's going to get rough. We're going, what? He says, they're going to drive your cars off your road. They're going to come at you. I'm going, what are you talking about? Who's going to do this? So the guy was telling us, well, it could happen. So you got to be prepared for the worst. You know what I mean? And we said, all right, well, that's kind of weird. But anyway, we were days away, I want to say a week away from having the vote. And indeed, what he said came true. I mean, they had brought in goons and thugs to literally follow us and harass us and try to drive our cars off the road into snowbanks and everything. And
now, who was doing it? The union organizers?
No, the Slutskys. The Slutskys.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And we had gone up against I was fired from my job. I was fired from the job. I guess I don't even know how they found out. And I wasn't organizing this, Eric. I was just one of the people listening to the idea of having a vote to have a union. I didn't organize this at all. It wasn't me.
Well, you're a natural leader. Hey, you sit there, you're going to be a coroner, you're going to be a union leader. You're going
to Right. Well, look how skinny I was. It made sense. Okay. So anyway, I got fired. The vote never took place. They had brought in the machines, actually, I remember, into the building, and nobody showed up. I don't know if what was that picture? I didn't see that one there.
I think it's related to I accidentally jumped.
Oh, we're going to get to that in a second. Yeah, we're going to get to that.
It was an accidental hit, but I think it's related.
It's not, but it is. Anyway, so I get fired. What's that?
It was a tease. No.
Oh, yeah, it's a teaser.
coming soon.
Yeah, coming soon, right? So they had, they began to have these German Alps festivals there in the summer. 1975, they put on a German Alps festival, huge. They rented this thing, a guy named Don Conover. And they also put on a country western festival there in the summer because it was a great place with a big tent to do this stuff. So I don't know where I got this from, but we came up with the idea to design, me and two other guys from the ski shop, came up with the idea to design a thing called igloo cups. Now, the igloo cup was a closed cell polyurethane foam pipe insulation. That's all it was. And it was like this circumference. And we ordered these huge 30-foot sections of closed cell pipe insulation, got bandsaws, cut them up into like 5-inch 6 sections. Then we got the base. We cut out the base with a jigsaw. We got these kids to stencil the logos of each music festival at Hunter Mountain onto the outside of the polyurethane foam. And we created something called an igloo cup, and you put your beer in it. Now, this did not exist. Try to keep in mind, they're everywhere now, but they did not exist then. And in the performance space in Sonora House, we converted and created hundreds of these igloo cups with the logos of the various festivals that were going on in the summer, with permission from the festivals. And
did you give them a cut or?
I don't remember. I'll tell you what we did do. I remember. We paid a fee to have a booth at the festival. And that booth was created by one of our guys who was an architect, and it was a giant igloo. And it was whitish. It looked like snow. It would look like an igloo. We put it in. Everybody just had a regular table, but we had an igloo, and inside the igloo, we sat, and keep in mind, this is 85, 90 degrees outside. we're in this plastic igloo drinking beer with these igloo cups on it, and the beers are coming out of a complete frozen locker, a foot
Sure.
locker that's frozen, and we're putting the beer, and these are beer festivals essentially. The German Alps Festival is ostensibly a beer festival. So we're in this igloo drinking these frozen beers, looking like we're living in heaven. And we're asking people we take the beer out and we just go, here, touch the beer, the bottle. And it was like frozen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of a gimmick. We sold thousands of these, Eric, for cash. And they were like, I don't know, $4 a piece. You know what I mean?
That's good money.
Yeah, all cash money. And it was just raining money into this booth, with cash and everything else. And we're just drinking during the course of these 9-hour beer festivals. So we did it again for the Country Music Festival. And this was stuff in the summer. Also in the summer, when we weren't doing this, we were able to transfer our unemployment because it was seasonal work when you worked at Hunter Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Once the snow melted, you were legally allowed to simply file for unemployment. There was no more ski business. We found out we could transfer that unemployment to St. Thomas in the Bahamas. So each year we would go to St. Thomas in the Bahamas and have which is a U.S. Territory, the U.S. Virgin Islands. So you were able to have unemployment from the States there, as part of the operation.
With a low cost of living and all that.
Exactly.
Jeez.
So when we weren't doing that, we were in St. Thomas, or this is where I came up with Groubert's Gorgeous Gutters of Grand Gorge. Now, Groubert's Gorgeous Gutters of Grand Gorge was a company I started to put gutters and leaders on these old Victorian homes that were all through that region. And I hired my friends, and we didn't really know much about gutters and leaders, but I was able to take measurements. A lot of people did house painting in the summer, stuff like that. So we were able to take measurements and order an entire entire house of gutters and leaders for like Victorian homes from Montgomery Ward. And they would bring a truck with the gutters and leaders. I don't know if it was pre-cut.
Probably because they had those Sears. You could buy an entire house from Sears. So why couldn't you buy?
Right. I think that we would measure it out. We measure out the house, and this wasn't easy because they had a lot of eaves and different angles on these old Victorian homes up in the Northeast. But Groubert's Gorgeous Gutters of Grand Gorge was able to meet your needs. And here's how we operated. I would knock on the door after knocking off someone's leader or gutter with my foot, thereby breaking it and causing some damage. I would then have the homeowner come out and show him that his gutters and leaders needed replacement. That was the beginning of the sales pitch. If the guy took the bait, we would then measure the whole house and do the whole house for quite a bit of money. And the truck would come and we would assemble this literal assembly kit of gutters and leaders for these homes. So we were doing that also. This was all in between the ski business, of which I was fired from. So I went to the neighboring mountain, which was in the next town. And that town was the birthplace and town of a guy named Scott Adams called Windham, New York. Now, Scott Adams grew up there, and I worked in the ski shop there. And I'm sure I must have run into him in real life, because the ski shop and the ski mountain, Windham, which is in the next town on Route 296, was pretty close by. And that was also a private mountain.
Small town.
What's that?
Pretty small town. So
yeah. Much smaller than Hunter and a smaller mountain than Hunter, but a private mountain, quasi-private at that point, some public, some private. And a guy would ski there in a fur coat with a huge smiley patch on his back who drove up in a Rolls Royce with a chauffeur.
That Windham? I think it was labeled as such when I found it.
The ski mountain looks, I don't know about the lodge. The mountain is definitely Windham.
Okay.
I don't remember the lodge, but it could be. So there's a guy, an old guy who was one of the private club members. He would ski in a full-length fur coat with a huge smiley patch, yellow smiley patch on his back, and he would be brought by a chauffeur in a Rolls Royce. That was Mortimer Levitt. That's how I got my job at the custom shop. To show you the connection. Levitt took a liking to me when I was running the ski shop at Windham, right? And one day in a blinding snowstorm, I was racing to get there to help Mortimer Levitt, get his skis together And that photo ensued with this F-85 1964 Cutlass convertible with a rag top that I replaced from Sears Roebuck, Eric. I put that rag top back on. There was a brand new one. I bought it from Sears to replace the destroyed canvas rag top that was on that F-85 Cutlass 1964. Fantastic beast of a machine. However, in that snowstorm, I think that was like, I want to say 7 a.m. On the way to Windham, I slid off the road and crashed into the sign, and it did a lot of damage. And I just left it there because I had
hold on. Folks need to understand. Do not lend Mark your vehicle. He has a problem with signs and poles and vehicles. Between a bicycle and a car, they come out wrecked.
If you pull back and show the entire article, you'll see that a oil tanker went through a restaurant up above that article this is like the front page of the Windham Journal the next morning. There was an oil truck that went right through the restaurant, couldn't stop, and drove. There's a picture of the truck. I mean, I wasn't the only crash, but there was an oil truck right above me that went through a restaurant. Anyway, so I left that wonderful car there, but it had some kind of vapor lock. It belonged to Jack Murphy, the owner of Sonora House. And he said, if you want to fix it up, it's yours. It had bucket seats. Up on top is the article of the oil tanker truck that went right through the restaurant at the bottom of 2. Tanker truck parks in Hensonville restaurant.
Great headline.
Great headline. Literally, at the end of the road, before you make this hairpin turn, was that restaurant, which I can't remember the name of, it might say in the article.
Sealy's.
Sealy's, yeah, an old family restaurant, really a nice place. The truck went straight through there. It was kind of interesting. But the car was given to me by Jack Murphy, and he said, if you want to fix it up, it's yours. And I said, are you kidding? Of course. Didn't have any seat belts. It was 1964, the F-85 Cutlass, 2-door. It was a beast. It had one problem. It had vapor lock. It was under the snow for years, Eric, up there.
Is this the same vapor lock that they talked about in My Cousin Vinny?
Yeah. Okay. I think so. Yeah. So the snow, what it really was water that got into the gas tank.
Oh, okay.
And unless I'm not an engineer, I'm a motorhead, but these guys probably know what I'm talking about. Unless you take the tank and vacuum and dry it out and do all that stuff, which I didn't have the ability to do, there was going to be condensation in that tank. So the car, when you turned it off after you drove it for a while, it wouldn't start. So you had to just keep the engine running. It started up, and then it wasn't a battery problem; it was a vapor loss. So you had to keep the engine going. But the thing was a beast. The thing was absolutely a beast. Anyway, so that's where it died. That beast died on the road to Windham Mountain Ski Shop, which was run by an old Dutch local guy, a huge guy with toothless, named Charlie Van Etten. Charlie Van Etten was like Mr. Haney from Green Acres. He also dressed like a bum, owned all kinds of property, owned the ski shop. You would think that this guy was a hillbilly out of Mississippi, but he was a hillbilly from the Dutch mountains of the Eastern Catskills, which is not so different. Took a liking to me, hired me to run the ski shop. And Charlie Van Etten turned me on one night at his house to Billy Hoagland cider. Don't ever drink Billy Hoagland cider. I've never met Billy Hoagland. All I had heard was the legend of his cider. So Charlie gave me a mason jar sitting in a chair in his living room, and he gave me a mason jar to drink from of Billy Hoagland cider. The next thing I know was I was at the foot of the chair, I think 14 hours later, coming awake from having drank Billy Hoagland cider in that chair. And that's all I remembered. And
that could be a PSA. Never drink from a mason jar or a jelly jar.
Or a jelly jar.
It's going to be something unexpected.
No, but the last thing I remember was taking the sip, like the first sip, and then 12 hours later being at the foot of the chair. I mean, I don't know what happened. Nothing happened. I just drank and that was it. But I mean, from the first sip, I was in a blackout. I don't know, what kind of joy that is, but don't ever take Billy Hoagland cider. That's all I can tell you. So Charlie Van Etten was the guy that turned me on to, in an indirect way, Mortimer Levitt of the Custom Shop, which is how I ended up in New York, because Levitt said, if you ever come to New York, look me up, I'll give you a job, which I did eventually do when I moved to New York. But staying in Windham, with that situation was fun because, the ski industry is fun and skiing is fun and being up there is kind of nice. And even to this day, I mean, it's a huge, huge recreational area.
And I suppose there might have been ski bunnies or something like that Marco
I'll tell you,
happy to show around.
I'll tell you the ski bunnies that there really were. There was a ski instructor named Kitty Falger. Kitty Falger in 1964 was a ski bunny who was a ski instructor. And she went on a show and taught the host how to ski on the show. And that guy's name was Johnny Carson, and that show was The Tonight Show. And she was from Hunter Mountain. And in 1964, that was a big deal. And that's what opened the floodgates out of New York after she went on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and taught him how to ski, making believe in the studio kind of thing. They just did a whole, mock-up. And that was what made Hunter Mountain, I put him on the map, was The Tonight Show and this chick, Kitty Falger. That being said, the Igloo cups were selling like hotcakes, Eric. This thing became a gold mine. And we found out at the same time, there were two other companies. Same time, not ahead of us, not behind us. One was Titties out of Texas, and the other one was Huggers out of Louisiana. And they had come up with the same thing as I did. And I don't know where I got it from, and I don't know where they got it from. But Titties, Huggers, and Igloo cups were the three companies in the United States making these beer coolers at the time. They had the same design we did. I don't know where they got their crap. Louisiana was probably easier for them to get the pipe insulation. But anyway, we were competing with them, and I went to Kmart in Kingston one morning. Kingston, New York, which used to be the capital of New York, was later moved to Albany because Kingston was too close to New York, and these corrupt politicians were coming up from New York to corrupt Kingston's politics. So they moved it further up the river to Albany to keep the New York slime bags out of politics in the state.
Yeah, that worked well.
Yeah, that worked pretty well. But ask Cuomo's son, Mario Cuomo's son, how well that worked. But nevertheless, I went into Kingston, New York that afternoon into there's a mall there, Hudson River Valley Mall or something. And in that Kmart was one of those huge cages that they do to display stuff. And it was filled to the brim with tens of thousands of Igloo cups from China. And they were 39 cents. And that was the end of our industry. That was the end of Titties. That was the end of Huggers. And that was the end of my Igloo cup dynasty that I was dreaming of. And I was defeated in 1978 by the Communist Party of China. And I hate them to this day because of what they did to me and my potential family.
A sign of a sign of things to come.
A sign of things to come. Yeah. Yeah. I think they were 39 or 59 cents or something, and they had different logos like Black Sabbath on them or stuff, whatever they had on there. But
and they're like, who cares? What? Copyright? Whatever. Trademark? Whatever.
I'll tell you this. There was a notch. There's a place called one of the towns on 214 outside of Hunter is called Lanesville. And if you go further, you will hit Phoenicia. And Phoenicia, we used to battle. Phoenicia was all hillbillies. Phoenicia had nothing to do with the resort area. They were all hillbillies. And we used to play them in softball every year. And this, when I later joined the Tanner's Tool and Die softball team, of which I have a photo somewhere I'm going to put up on Locals. Somebody sent me a photo of this softball team, and we were really good. And so was Phoenicia. And every year we would end up playing Phoenicia in the champions. Titties, Huggers, and Mark. It sounds like a Locals untold story. Well, I just told it. But the reality of it is we would play softball against this team in Phoenicia, and they were great too. They really were. And this would be a war. This was like, people would come from all over to see these games. But in between Hunter and Phoenicia was a town called Lanesville. And Lanesville had the video freaks. Like when we had Sonora House, they had a group of video people that were called the Video Freaks, which was their arts commune. They had a house there, and they were making video, and they had a local TV signal they put out, making a TV, whatever that is when you have local television, Eric.
Community access.
It was community before they had community access, right?
Okay.
It was still community access, but you're right, and they didn't call it that back then. So these guys were in between. Now there was a place called the Stony Clove. There was a place called the Stony Clove Notch, which was really the notch. I don't know if you saw, if I sent you a picture of this notch, you could look geographically. If you just throw up some pictures there, maybe you'll stumble onto it. The Stony Clove Notch was the notch in the, there it is. Okay. So this is the road. On the extreme right is Route 214, which goes from 23A, the county road 23A in Hunter. Geez, I haven't thought about this in a long time. To the other side of the Stony Clove Notch, which is Phoenicia. And I think it's 32 goes into Kingston from there, that other road on the other side. But anyway, so on that Stony Clove Notch, if you look at the notch, people go hiking there, right? And there's a lake, and there's camping, and there's some hiking, and it's really nice. It's really beautiful. In that Stony Clove Notch, in 1996, somebody built a weight loss clinic called Vatra. I didn't even know about this place, but I do know the Stony Clove Notch. I don't know about Vatra, but it must have been a house, because there's nothing commercial there. There's not even a gas station. There's nothing. So it's kind of like, Butcher Holla. It looks like, it's like coal miner's daughter country in there. So in that weight loss spa, Vatra, I guess part of the weight loss was to go hiking up that mountain, which will give you a lot of weight loss if you go hiking up there.
Oh yeah.
There's a girl who begins to go hiking with a friend, and in that hike, for the first time, the girl reveals an affair that she had, and this is the first recorded incident right there of the girl telling this person, who was named Dale Young, about her affair with this guy. And the woman hiking, the girl hiking, was named Monica Lewinsky. And right in that Stony Clove Notch is where Monica Lewinsky, for the first time, told Dale Young, her friend, that she had an affair with Bill Clinton, the president of the United States, and had a dress with his semen on it. That's where it happened, my friends, in 1996.
Wow. Obviously, that stayed buried.
Right. But I'm saying there's a lot of weird stuff that happened there. Like, when we talked about Sonora House, I talked about the ghost that I'd seen in Sonora House, which was Mrs. Dunn, who I saw floating around in the ballroom of Sonora House when I came down to get a sandwich in the middle of the night. She was in a nightgown, and she just hovering. And I wasn't high. I wasn't on any mushrooms or anything. She was going to get a sandwich, and she was hovering there. And then my girlfriend went down. She saw her too, came back to bed, blah, blah, blah. The next day, we went to the local library and told them about the ghost. And the librarian, who was elderly, said that's old Mrs. Dunn. And she showed us clippings of old Mrs. Dunn, who had committed suicide because she found her husband and her daughter in the attic having sex of the house we were living in 1928. So she committed suicide. I didn't know anything about this. She showed us clippings, and the old librarian said the house is haunted and asked us if we had seen her. And I said, yeah, we saw her last night. And I was with my girlfriend, Judy, at the time. And she said, well, you're not the only ones who've seen her. Nothing really happened. She just kind of like was standing there. And I would say it's about 75, 85 feet away, Eric, in the middle of the ballroom, just hovering, and I just looked at her. She looked at me. She didn't do anything weird. It was kind of like she was like a foot off the ground.
Was she translucent or anything?
Yes, I would say so. Yes, that would be a good word. Yes. Okay. I went in, got the sandwich, went back up the winding staircase. It was a 3-floor hotel. Looked like something out of The Shining. But we covered that. We've covered this in the episode of Sonora House. But just, it was the same time. My girlfriend went back down. She saw her too, came back to bed, and we just compared notes, and it was kind of, it was what it was. And then we went to the librarian the next day. But those two ski shops, the Windham Mountain and the Hunter Mountain ski shop, the Hunter Mountain, obviously a lot bigger, had so many crazy things going on there, at that time, that it's a wonder that people didn't get killed. And in fact, people did get killed. And that's why they had the ski patrol, and they had these people trying to prevent people from skiing while high. But they would literally go to the bar, get loaded, get back on the lift. And you're talking about thousands and thousands of people. It's a wonder more people did not get killed. You know what I mean?
They were tougher back then.
I think they were tougher back then. And there was less lawyers.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Anyway, the Sanford Robinson Grifford, for the record, was the painter of that painting, Hudson River School painter who painted that Hunter Mountain painting that Eric showed, just for the record.
Wow, amazing. So then after you left here, you went to the custom shop.
Right. So this was a bridge. Right. This was a bridge that we had missed this part of the storyline. Before I went to New York, I worked here, and it provided income and the ability to live up there. They also built housing. They built like garden apartments, brand new, under some sort of housing program out of the federal government to allow local workers to live in housing. You know how like local workers can't afford to live where the resort is? This is a problem in Aspen. It's a problem in many resorts.
It's a company town trick, the way they build the housing, and then
right. But this was federal money, right? So the federal money built these two-story garden apartments. And you had to get on a waiting list, but I got in there and I moved to New York, but I kept it for many years by simply having remote control devices on the lights and cardboard cutouts in the windows. And we come up on the weekend and go skiing, but that's a story for another day. The point of the matter is, after this period, I moved to New York and went to work for that guy, Mortimer Levitt of the Custom Shop, which you can see that episode somewhere in our video file that Eric has assembled.
I think I'm going to put a playlist together about your life. Now there's enough episodes to kind of put something
of just these straight jobs. I think you're right. And I don't know about straight jobs, but there's these Sonora House, Custom Shop, Coffee Shop, and now Ski Shop. Those three, definitely the shop ones, go together in some way. Yeah,
and Sonora House. So I mean, it's just kind of a timeline, and maybe your uncle, your grandfather, running the campaign. Just all that different stuff.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, so I mean, I when I see the ski industry, the reason where came to mind, I was in the airport, and when we went to Vegas, and I don't know, it was NBC had on some sort of World Cup skiing thing, a giant slalom and downhill and a slalom, and I was explaining to my friend about what the slalom was and the whole ski thing, and it brought me back to this story. That's why I called you and said, let's do this ski story. Watching that thing on NBC this weekend, seeing those slalom races and giant slalom and downhill, it's very exciting to watch, but I know a lot about it. So I thought it might be a good story.
Oh, for sure. And it's cold as hell and snowy in a lot of places.
Right. It's snowy everywhere. And it just brought back to mind all the snow stuff from Hunter Mountain and everything. And, it looked like a science fiction movie when they turned on those snow guns at night, blanketing the entire town with snow. It really was impressive. And they did it at night. So in the morning, there would be a fresh coat of snow on the entire mountain. I mean, and then they brought out these caterpillars and they groomed it. I mean, it was an impressive industrial operation, Eric, to see these guys, how they figured it out themselves after World War II. These construction engineer types were able to come up with this idea, and they worked hard. These two old men, later old men, but they weren't as old then, they worked super hard to pull this together, the Slutsky brothers.
I believe it. Hey, we got a Rumble rant.
Oh.
So from Kofefovich. Mark is the crazy uncle that everyone likes to show up for the holidays.
I've never been an uncle. Oh, no, I am an uncle. That's right. I forgot. I technically am an uncle. So, yeah, that is true.
Awesome. We got a new member with Christopher Black. Thank you very much. Pamela Clifton's.
Just want to put in the Taurus, which I am, Taurus the bull, in this little break here. Okay, go on. Sorry. Hold on. Here's my miniature harmonica that is the size of my thumb. I just want to put this up here.
You see, a socialist past is coming to here. It's like, don't talk about merchandise. Let me interrupt everything.
All right. Sorry. Go right, Eric.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Pamela Clifton. Catherine S. wants to know, did you ever ski in Lake Placid?
No, but I'll tell you something. I had a friend, Joe Kempa, who was from Lake Placid. He moved to Hunter Mountain, and he had carried the cameras for the 1980 for ABC because he was local. He carried the cameras down the slope behind the skiers physically. And Joe Kempa was the one. I told Viva this the other day. Joe Kempa was the one who took me to the Montreal Forum in 1981 or 80 or 81 to see Team Canada versus the Russians with Tretiak in goal. And it was by the second period, it was 8-1 or something. The Canadians were crying. We were sitting next to Pierre Trudeau and Maggie Trudeau. I was telling this to Viva just the other day. We got seats on the glass because of Joe Kempa knowing everybody from the Olympics. So we went outside and we followed Pierre Trudeau out into the lobby in between the first and second period of that game. And maybe it was 5-0 by the second. I think it ended up being 8-1 or something. And Tretiak, I just remember Tretiak smiling with no teeth, mocking the Canadians, the famous Russian goalie. And the Canadian team had all-stars all through from the NHL playing on Team Canada. I don't know exactly who it was, but the best of the best. And they got their clocks cleaned by the Soviets. Anyway, Pierre Trudeau went out into the lobby, held a press conference, started crying because they were losing to the Russians, and then other people were crying. And then we went to afterwards went to a strip club where I won't go into what happened in this strip club, but it was a private thing in the back called a box job, and I won't get into that because it was a separate thing. But the reality of it is the Canadians were so deeply traumatized by this loss to the Russians that I was startled. It was startling. And Joe and I went back across to Lake Placid. And then eventually, he had already moved to Hunter Mountain. So, yeah, to answer the question, the answer is yes.
All right, Pasha Moyer. I'm still on Vakatsi looking for some tchotchkes to bring home from NC, North Carolina. Any ideas?
What could be in North Carolina? I'm going to steal a Yiddish word from Viva called schmeckel. And I don't know. I'm going to steal one from Viva today. In honor of Viva, I will now give credit to Viva for schmeckel. But take it today as the Yiddish word of the day, passing it on to Pasha.
And the bottom line is to keep it in your pants.
Keep it in your pants, according to Viva. Yeah, which is not a bad idea.
Justin Moore, I would love to see an episode on the Video Free X.
Yeah, she knows she must know who it is. Justin, is it a guy or a girl? It's a girl.
Well, Justin Moore looks like a male name, but I don't know.
Long live the internet. Yeah, the Video Freaks. I you know what? I don't have enough. We met them. We had a meeting of Sonora House and the Video Freaks at one point. It was a meeting of these two art communes. But I didn't really hang out with them that much. There might be a documentary on the Video Freaks out there from Lanesville. I think, in fact, there is. I think I've seen it, a documentary on the Video Freaks.
Okay, I never heard of them.
This was a New York story, though, that we just told. Okay. This was a New York story. And if you open the book to the New York stories,
that's
New York pops out with Central Park, and you'll see the World Trade Towers in the back.
Nice.
It was really a nice little gift someone gave me a number of years ago. So it is a New York story.
That's awesome.
I know.
Justin Moore, skiing while high is a real come down.
Well, it's done quite a bit. It really is done quite a bit. And there was a period of time when they were skiing on Quaaludes. They didn't make it 10 feet out of the lodge. These people were just rolling around laughing in the snow. And they didn't even care. It cost them a fortune. They didn't even give a crap.
They were the safest of all.
Yeah, they were safe, so they didn't feel bad. But there were mobsters who came up there. There were Gambino family members the Gambinos would drop their kids off and say, take care of them and give me like $500 in cash and say, get them whatever they want, put it on my bill. And we would outfit them in like, snow parkers and pants and everything else. And there was one teenage girl who was a Gambino who just said, if you don't give me the right jacket, my father's going to kill you. Just making a joke out of it.
Here you go, ma'am.
Yeah.
Richard Adams, I pulled a rope on a howitzer to do snow control.
I pulled a rope on. That's funny. That's funny.
Pasha, our last super chat, not bringing any extras back with me, though.
Okay.
with his tchotchkes. No extra tchotchkes.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right, right.
But speaking of support animals or merch, well, we have this goofy bear. If anybody wants, you could find a Groubert in our merch store. We have an Oswald, but Oswald was kidnapped by Viva Fry to give to his children. No, I gave it to him to give to the kids. But there will be another Oswald. He will rise again, and he will be standing here on the channel because Oswald will not quit. And Mr. Security, 550 from Canada. Thank you, sir.
Wow.
So
some documents for locals that are going to be very impressive.
Yes, and I will be loading up a radio commercial from Mark. That is
the radio commercial. Okay, let me just explain what you're getting into. By the way, here's some documents from the Housing Authority of the Garden Apartments, and we'll put those up on locals. Mountain View Housing Corporation. That's kind of interesting.
Okay, Justin's a long-haired guy. Thanks for the great show.
Okay, I can't see. I'm sorry. It's just a very small picture. I'm just looking at it. They had a magazine. They had a magazine called The Hunter's Scene, shown here with a parade of. Okay. So on the back, interesting. Look at this. Here's the festivals I was talking about. Polka Festival. This is one of the ads. A country music festival where we sold the. Let's see who's playing this year. 1978. Johnny Rodriguez, Hank Snow, Farron Young, Dick Curlis. Dick Curlis was a early Crenshaw lookalike. I don't know if you can see Dick Curlis with the eye patch. There'll be a tombstone every mile by Dick Curlis. Look it up, folks. Tina Welch, I think, was local. Jerry Medora was local. August 12th, 13th, and I think the 14th, 1978 Country Music Festival. So, wow, what a memory trip this has been for me. But I'll show you this. I just want to show you this one thing, because I stumbled onto this morning inside this publication. In the back of, not the back, but page 61 is an article. It says the village hall adjacent to the firehouse and directly across from Gartley's Tool and Die on Main Street in Tannersville provides the Sonora Music and Arts Festival with immense amounts of exposure and tourists and local residents. We expanded the Sonora House operation to the local building next to the firehouse in town in Tannersville to put shows on at this point.
Nice.
So there's an article about the Jerry Moore Work Band coming to the festival, and the text says Goldberg Review. Oh, I'm gonna have to read this. This is interesting. I'm gonna have to take a look at this after the show. Wow, this is great. I don't remember any of this stuff. This is great.
Awesome. More coming to locals and a show near you. So Friday we have Freeform Friday. I don't know if Barnes will be there or not.
Who are you talking to? You talking to me?
I'm talking to everybody.
Oh,
you, everybody,
no,
the world.
I don't know who you're talking to, but what about the guys who brought the General Walker book? Did you sign any of those General Walker books?
They didn't bring it. I brought that and gave it to him.
Oh, and then he got me to sign it?
He got you to sign that. Yes.
Okay. What happened to your book?
That
you gave it away to this guy?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought he brought it with him. That's crazy. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. He came from Toronto, and I figured that was a pretty good distance. And
oh, I see. I thought he brought the book with him. Okay.
Yeah.
Was there another book? Was there another guy with that Walker book?
Nobody else had a Walker book that I know of.
Okay. All right. Because I remember. All right. Maybe I signed a couple of them then. But I just wanted to thank people in the JFK book community who allowed us to get the Walker books through PayPal. So thanks. Thank you.
All right. Oh, we got one more super chat just under the wire. Not a ski question. What did Mark think of the Dems trying to discredit Matt Taibbi as a journalist at the congressional hearing? We actually talked about this on Freeform Friday last week.
We did talk about it, and I would expect nothing less. I thought, if the other side would have done the same thing, I imagine. I didn't think much of it. He handled himself well, right? I mean, he handled himself well.
As well as he could. He handled himself better than I would have.
More draconian things have happened in that room than that. That's all I can tell you.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. I would have. I couldn't have handled it as well. Right. I would have been mouthing off or trying to do snarky comments.
Well, keep in mind, I mean, Matt Taibbi is a leftist, so these people were his people doing this to him. So, I mean, it was coming from his own family.
Oh, yeah, there's one more. Jeff SK sent us a locals tip.
Mhm.
Best podcast. Sorry, Nick. Like I said
Who's
to
Nick?
Mark, Ricada.
Oh.
Like I said to Mark, I love the coffee shop and Mayflower episode so much. Can
Oh,
you
I remember this
please
guy. Yeah. Go ahead.
can you please jingle the ice cup?
Well, there's very little ice left, but I'll jingle it anyway.
All right. Well, all right. So Friday, Freeform Friday, and we will see everyone then.
Boy, see you. Thanks. Thanks, Emily.